Who are you, and what do you want? Simple questions, powerful questions. Outside the science fiction that centers these questions are themselves the center of identity, both personal and of any given nation. The self-named fortune tell of the Crimson Sky's Spicy Air Tales story faces these very questions, both personally and how they are faced by the newly divided nations of the former United States. Waking up alone, suffering amnesia, and where danger or safety is nebulous and unclear, is not just an engaging story hook, it's the beginning of the character's engagement with who they are or are supposed to be. Why am I here? What about me has led me here? Of course, the character that would become Fortune Tell isn't left alone for long. He meets other characters, and they see in him a person with potential. But the potential to do what or who to be is not offered. In the world of Crimson Skies, a political faction called the Unionists seek to reunite the new nation-states back into the United States of America, and their reasons for doing so vaguely gesture in the direction of the freedom and prosperity the single nation used to provide. The specific Unionists Fortune meets invoke the sacrifices suffered in the American Civil War as sacrifices needing to be honored by reversing the breakup and fall from unity suffered by America. If you knew nothing of American history, of its people, their hopes and dreams, and the questions they faced as part of one united nation, then this supposed quest to return to honor and greatness should seem very vague and disingenuous. If that once united nation is so great, why did a critical mass of people, never mind any plurality, allow it to dissolve? And for that matter, why should Unionists trust an amnesiac to become someone special enough to work and fight for that cause? It seems simple enough to conclude that Fortune's hunt is just a mercenary quest. Help this one faction out of many seemingly interchangeable factions, and they will supposedly enlighten him on who he was and what he was doing with his forgotten life. However, as Fortune goes looking for answers from the people who supposedly knew him in his past, he meets yet other enigmatic figures that seem to know him, or at least who he was, and yet also meet other former Americans that seem to be on a similar quest to himself. The way his interactions unfold, there's a selection of responses someone who knew him end up choosing. Either they flee in fear of someone they've seemed to do wrong, or they engage him in response to some past offense, or they try and ply fortune tell for what he knows or remembers, like someone they can use as a potential asset. Without the benefit of a third-person omniscient view of relationships, seeing who runs, who strikes, and who tries to play the amnesiac for a sucker could be a good gauge for what place in the pecking order the amnesiac subject was in. What it doesn't say is what the motivation of that amnesiac in question should be. Should they continue their apparent struggle to dominate those lessers, compete with peers, and survive rival big shots? Or should they forge a new direction? Fortune Tell, in seeking answers for his forgotten past, gets a sharp greeting from the famous, glamorous, and infamous female air pirate, the Black Swan. Despite her seeming to take revenge for a past offense he may have offered, Fortune Tell can't offer back enmity of any sort. With no memory at all, he can't offer retort, defense, nor any reason for wanting to give offense. So Fortune Tell has only his perception of this woman apparently scorned, and a choice to make. With an involuntary sense of attraction to the Black Swan and no reasons to disdain her, Fortune offers to fully reconcile himself with her. She might or might not have knowledge of his past, but as the story makes clear, it's far beside the point. In forgetting his past, Fortune is essentially free to disown any past transgressions and free of having to uphold any offending obligation. Fortune Tell chooses to be a new man and makes friends with the Black Swan. It might be easy for us readers to think that any unsavory character might get off easy by simply forgetting their past self, or pretending to in a memory gambit. But in a universe where it would be uncommon for an amnesiac to also be skillful and charismatic, it's a reason to drop guard and take them in as a separate person. Indeed, the amnesiac Fortune Tell is not totally divorced from his past life. His physical skills and knowledge remain, and come back to him at opportune times. From times as simple as recognizing a book, understanding another language, and picking locks, to fighting and flying planes. At certain points, Fortune wonders at what kind of person would choose the skill set he has. Maybe someone he doesn't like a pirate or some other criminal. While his past self's moral standing remains in question for the story, notwithstanding where he got his skills and instincts from, they serve him well into becoming a genuine hero of the story. Whether it's surviving and fighting back against a pirate attack on a militia airfield, or surviving and fighting back against a pirate attack on a passenger zeppelin, Fortune's phantom skills and heroic instincts come through. I may not know the name of it, but I think there's an idea where even if a person loses specific memories, like social constructs such as their name or history, it might also be that not only do they retain their knowledge and skills, but also that person will retain their fundamental character or instincts. As an example, if someone is found in a social situation where they are compelled to act a certain way, i.e., as part of a dog-eat-dog world like in a criminal gang, then take that away, the social pressures and the memory of it, and it's possible that the personality that emerges can be one that's more sociable, less selfish, and less likely to choose violating other persons for personal satisfaction. Again, it's just an idea, and I have no basis for believing it's in any way real or studied. One source I've found calls it the death of personality, where a person has their whole mind, memory, knowledge, experience, everything wiped by fictional means, so that a new person can be raised in the same body, essentially killing someone undesirable, like a murderer, without depriving society of a human life and a possible person that deserves due consideration. Fortune Tell is not exactly the same case, as I'll spell out. Upon waking into his amnesia and coming across another person, an unassuming woman, Fortune may act to escape and restrain a presumed captor, but won't resort to maximum damaging violence, what a selfish, craven killer might choose on instinct in his place. The woman is not defenseless, as Fortune finds out, but neither is Fortune faced with a hostile group that means him harm. With no knowledge of himself or his surroundings, much less the people he's dealing with, Fortune's instincts and decision-making ability allow his personality to come out. He's a reasonable man that does not offer hostility without cause, and chooses companionship and community with other people rather than isolation and rapacity. That Fortune Tell will regularly face danger and step in harm's way for others, and not just himself, tells of an innate personality, not of an antisocial criminal, but of a protective and heroic member of society at large. Where others may flee to save their own skins, Fortune Tell doesn't abandon anyone to suffer violence, not when he can help it. In surviving a pirate attack on an airliner Zeppelin and saving his companion at the same time, Fortune Tell gets to meet yet another new person. After being shot down, Fortune Tell and his companion are taken in by a random woman living alone in the woods, and they get to talking. After a stormy night and day of recovery, Fortune gets to know the stranger and finds she lives where she does, mostly to honor her late mother's memory and the community she was a part of. A community that bands together to help her make a living, even when it would be easier to leave and make a new life elsewhere. By the time Fortune departs, he's found his new motivation. Not some abstract cause of national greatness, but a sense that certain people and communities they bring together are truly worth upholding and fighting for. To this point, almost everything in Fortune's world, before and post amnesia, was built on the rich and unscrupulous taking what they want from everyone else. The divided states of America in the Crimson Skies are essentially founded on this principle, and the rampant air piracy is a logical extension. Why form one nation when everybody should just take what they want, where they can, and give nothing back? This is where it becomes clear that Fortune's hunt for his identity very much parallels the people of the former United States having to find their own national identity as well. Fortune's journey takes him into the People's Collective, which consists of most of the farmland in what was America's Midwest, founded on uniquely American principles of Christianity and a kind of rural collectivism and socialism that requires everyone to participate in supporting what rustic quality of life that can be managed. Without easy access to the rest of the United States, the People's Collective has to leverage their almost purely agrarian economy to make up for their lacking mechanized industry and mineral extraction wealth, to keep up technologically and militarily with its hostile neighbors, and avoid being conquered. As written in story and expanded upon by the Crimson Skies reference book, The Airman's Gazetteer, the founding members of the People's Collective essentially leveraged their Christian piety and the religious sensibilities of the region's farmers to secede from the United States and form one nation to defend farmers from banks repossessing their lands and tools and avoid a plague of unemployment and destitution to follow. The story of that nation-state's founding was essentially that God had called upon them to form a Christian community in the image of the earliest examples, and in doing so, they would avoid being made homeless by banks or robbed by less fortunate and less scrupulous ne'er-do-wells. It's also a way of feeling exceptional, even superior, to people from other surrounding nations. They may have more money and more pleasures of the flesh, but we are God's chosen, pure and righteous. Indeed, it seems conducive to a friendly reception when Fortune flies in on his way to the next part of his investigation. The people of a town take in him and his companion, offer them something to eat and a place to stay for the night, until they can manage better accommodations later, and insist that they join in the town's mass next morning. Such is their hospitality. As saccharine as this seems, it's not the rule. As the Gazetteer enumerates, not only is the People's Collective subject to machinations by the industrial states of America around the Great Lakes, but they're also subject to a migrant crisis from Texas, and internal insurrection as well. The reasons essentially boil down to, if you're not lucky enough to own a farm, don't like that people have to help out and share wherever they can, or your visage clashes with the specific Midwest rustic Christian rural aesthetic, then you might be trouble. As just one example of a new nation-state pulling itself out of the former United States, the nation calling itself the People's Collective has a national story that binds its people together, but also creates enemies and exacerbates hostility with others, not just rival nations, but also people that might have looked to them for a second chance at life. If you've read enough of the Crimson Skies books and come across a couple of the characters designated as citizens of the People's Collective, a common refrain you'll hear is that they stand for a part of the United States' original promise, that everyone should be provided for so that everyone gets a fair shot at prosperity. It's an ideal that holds the nation together, to be sure, But the fault is not the ideal. It is that the very founding of the nation precludes that ideal being applied to everyone that could benefit, much less pay it forward. This struggle for national identity and the struggle with its follies is faced by every nation, real and fictional. How to keep the people of the nation working and living together and defend from hostile intent, both foreign and domestic, or even its own irrelevance. And it is this struggle that centers the Unionist cause that Fortune Tell finds for himself. By and by, Fortune Tell gets closer to the phantom figure, General Argent, someone supposedly involved in his past life and who can supposedly help him remember who he was. While captured by the General's pirate squadron, and after seemingly been baited to give out information, Fortune Tell has a bit of a brainstorm. The supposed ally he spoke to, between their two jail cells, spelled out a whole villainous backstory for his quarry, involving wounded British pride and an American mint. By one overeager plant and a leap in logic, Fortune figures that the evil master plan has nothing to do with stealing a phantom stash of gold, but rather to do with currency manipulation. The real evil master plan, he figures, is that counterfeit currency can be spread throughout America, debasing and destroying the worth of all the local nations' money. Therefore, with the proper manipulation, a convenient new currency can come out, able to store value and bring the divided states back under a kind of centralized control. They wouldn't be the United States, but they would be under the thumb of a central authority. After witnessing decent people struggle to uphold community and nation, and how much had been lost by the United States dissolution by regionalism, Fortune Tell can't and won't suffer a scheme to subject former Americans to a new kind of monetary-based imperialism. At this point, Fortune's hunt for his past identity is rendered utterly irrelevant. Whatever he was in the past, he would choose now to be the champion of the Unionist cause, and Americans' need. One battle for fool's gold and one destroyed former U.S. Mint later, Fortune comes to several conclusions. His quarry, the British General Argent, and his supposed ally, Austrian-born scientist Emil Dragovich, were one and the same person. That same man saw some current shameful weakness in British imperial power and traced it back to the founding of independent America. And with a dissolved America, British imperial prestige can be restored by subjugating the new nations a la counterfeit currency. It's another dark side of national identity taken to the scale of imperial identity that would see American national identity further degraded, at least as far as the Unionist cause was concerned. In a broader context, the cause of restoring the prestige of British imperialism lost by American independence is absurd. Almost 200 years has produced two very different nations, such that one cannot be subsumed by the other. In parallel, it's possible that the in-universe Unionist cause might be futile. The America and Americans of this alternate universe may be so different that reunification may also be absurd. Just as Fortune Tell decides to forego finding his past self and all his faults in favor of upholding his new identity and forging a new life among friends and allies, so too with the fractured American successor states. In universe, the Unionist cause has an image problem. It's looked upon as a movement of mad bombers and unhinged zealots, but their own folly may be more mundane. They may not realize that they can't resurrect the United States as they remember it, and from a certain perspective, it might be best that they don't. The United States, both real and fictional, was never the ideal society that people wanted or imagined it to be, especially outside a nostalgic view. What mattered was that part of being American was to want and try to make it better, thus stated in the Constitution's preamble. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. In the Crimson Skies, that union is gone, and it's never coming back. At least, not in the same way or form. If the story of Fortune's Hunt can offer any lesson of value, it's that who we were in the past is far less important than how we choose to make ourselves now, even anew, and how we make our own future, in whatever new society we can make. In a way, that's one promise of the United States that can still be kept in the Crimson Skies. Whoever, whatever you were in the old world, you can find and make yourself again in the new world.